Hey friends, welcome back to a new video. What I want to do in this video is I want to talk about the relationship between motivation and goals, or motivation and passion, motivation and life purpose. And like once you've identified a subject area that you want to work on, and you've codified a purpose around that subject area, how do you create motivation that will change your actions to be aligned with that purpose with as much positive motivation as possible? This is the problem. And last night I had a very long discussion with ChatGPT on these issues, and it was basically 51 pages, and I printed that out, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to read that to you. I mean, it's just, I probably have a series of maybe like 4 or 5 30-minute videos or something like that. That's just not, I can boil it down. So most of these were my ideas, but ChatGPT was, riffing off of we were riffing off of each other. It was a conversation. And just to give a little bit of a backstory. So lately I've been working on the subject area of like getting my shit together. And it's so funny. This is how I framed it to ChatGPT too. This is the subject area, getting your shit together, right? There's almost no other way no better way to say that, what that means. Everybody knows what that means too. It's getting your life together even sounds a little bit too pedantic. I mean, getting your shit together, becoming well-rounded in all survival aspects of life. And what's funny is when I said health, finances, and relationships, ChatGPT was like, yeah, those are the central areas: health, finances, and relationships, and they intersect with each other too. And we'll talk about this when we talk about my life purpose. But actually, the theory on this is remarkably simple, but sophisticated enough to be kind of beautiful too. I mean, there's I guess somewhat of a science behind this stuff. And positive psychology, because this is not some frou-frou spiritual, thing, or even some personal development, trying to develop beyond the human. Like when we're talking about motivation comes from the root, even though it can be inspired by the crown. So motivation has to come from within, from the feminine, from the earth. Motivation comes from the earth. That's a little esoteric, but you don't even need that theory. Like, the theory here can be explained in a very simple way. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to try to explain that. But the overall thesis here is that what you want is you want to figure out what things. We're talking about getting your life together purpose. So you have to identify a purpose. Now, this may not be your ideal career life purpose. It doesn't have to be that specific. It's just identify a purpose. It could be something like, I want to get better at playing chess, or I want to get better at playing jazz trumpet, or I want to get better at God forbid, dating, or something like that. I don't know why I said God forbid. I want to get better at any number of things. I want to get better at making money. I want to get better at working on my physical health. I want to get better at removing unhealthy things that I love, right, that I might label as addictions. Be careful with that. I'll do a video on addiction. It's a very complex topic, actually. And for those of you who are trying to work on your alcohol addiction, quote unquote, I shit you not, this Michelob Ultra Zero, I bought this just to see, because I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and they said, "Why don't you try the non-alcoholic beer and just see, what it's like?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, it's not even going to taste the same. It doesn't have any alcohol in it. What's it going to do for me?" But when you realize that a lot of your addiction is tactile and psychological, so it's opening the bottle, holding the bottle in your hand, and the taste and the texture and how it feels going down, all that stuff. The crazy aspect is when you have a craving, you just take one sip of this. It tastes just like the alcoholic version of this beer. I don't know if you've ever had a Michelob Ultra beer. It's a pretty good beer. This tastes, I shit you not, like 90% like that. And so much of addiction, even though it manifests as physical, it's actually your relationship to this process of drinking. And this can really help you. Like, for example, if you want to stop drinking as much alcohol or stop drinking alcohol, period, this is a fantastic, and I know not everybody has access to this, but I'm just saying that, like, it's little things like this, little hacks, that, I shit you not, the craving goes away, right? You take one sip of this and the craving goes away. It's the feel of the bottle in your hand. It's your relationship. It's like people who are addicted to smoking. They're not so much addicted to smoking. They're addicted to being able to take a break, right? And pull the cigarette out, smell the cigarette, keep the cigarette in their mouth, hold it in their hand for a little while, put it in their mouth, and then they light the cigarette, and they take their little break, and then they go back and do something else. And while they're on their little break, they may be like thinking, right? And so when you stop smoking, it's all those little rituals, right? It's not just as simple as an alcohol addiction or a nicotine addiction. It's the process and the relationship that you have with the ritual of drinking a beer, right? I mean, the feel of the bottle in your hands, right? I know this might be news to a lot of people, but this is very useful if you're trying to change something. Because there's really two kinds of motivation, and they actually go together. And when we talk about sustainability, this is going to become an issue. But I remember Leo Gura did a video on this, which never left my mind. It was that there's extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So you can think of motivation generally as fuel to complete a goal or a purpose. A goal is really just a species of a purpose, right? A project is just a species of a purpose. You got, like, when you have a goal, you need a purpose. When you have a project, you need a purpose. When you have, when you need sustainable projects and sustainable like a sustainable habit, you need a purpose behind that. Because once you have a purpose, you can start to figure out how you can think the right way about extrinsic motivation and build more intrinsic motivation. Because the more motivation you have to pursue your purpose, the more of those goals are going to get accomplished. But you have to set up the system to do this in the right way. And that becomes the challenge. So, for example, those of you who have found your career life purpose, that's step one. Step two is, how do you create the motivation to get you to where you're taking extraordinary action? You're not just taking, like, oh, I'm going to dabble in something for 5 minutes. No, you're like 5 hours or more every day. You're working on this thing. It's like you're obsessed with it. It's all you're thinking about. Can you imagine? I mean, this person will become a trillionaire. This is a great wrap up for the first third of this video. But if you could bottle somehow creating the motivation that people need to get their shit together, to get their basic life skills to get, not life skills, but life results together. So we're talking about financial health, relationship health, health, mental health, physical health, to where they're functioning in a balanced way that's beneficial and ideal for their life. If you could bottle that and sell it as like a pill, and people would take that pill and they would naturally be motivated and passionate about taking those actions every day, you'd be a trillionaire. Even ChatGPT agreed with this. ChatGPT's like, that's exactly right. Because it would be all over the world, right? This is really the $1 trillion question, is how do you link motivation with purpose? How do you create a purpose and then create the motivation needed using theory in the first instance? Because without a plan, you don't have any idea of what to do. And the theory is actually pretty simple. Once you have the theory, then you can work on how to create the variables that the theory requires. So that's what the next third of this video is going to be, is to give the theory, and then the final third we'll talk about filling in the variables that the theory requires. So just give me 1 second. All right, friends, welcome back. So let's talk about the theory. Well, number one is you turn it into a project, an ongoing project, and you turn it into a game. So for example, let's say that you want to be physically fit. You don't have any motivation for running, right? You got to be very specific too, like how you're going to do it. Like, I'm going to be physically fit and I'm going to do it through running. So the first step in the theory has to be, you have to be very clear. Like, you don't want to mix getting your shit together in a practical way with spirituality, right? Like, that's too much. So you want to narrow your focus. So for example, I want to get my physical health together, and I'm going to do it through running. So the subject area in the theory is getting your shit together regarding physical health. The purpose is more specific. I'm going to get my shit together regarding physical health through running. And that's your purpose. So there's a difference between the subject area and the purpose. Now, the question is, how do I create the motivation to get my physical health together, or get my shit together regarding physical health via running? How do I motivate myself to run, to be obsessed with running even, to where that's what I'm thinking about a lot of the time? So now we have this concept of healthy obsession. So Magnus Carlsen was talking about this on his Joe Rogan interview. I recommend you guys watch that interview, where he talks about, even during that interview, Joe asked him, "Are you thinking about chess right now?" And Magnus is like, "Yes." See, he's all in. How do you create that kind of massive motivation, which translates into massive action regarding your purpose? Let's say it's running. Like, we're not talking about dabbling. We're not talking about like running around the block once or twice. We're talking about somebody who's like obsessed with running, who goes out and runs like 5 miles a day, right? Or more. Or you can translate this to chess. How do you create somebody who practices chess 5 hours a day, or somebody who practices a musical instrument 5 hours a day, or somebody who practices spirituality 5 hours a day, or somebody who anything? That's your subject area, is chess, spirituality, philosophy, medicine, psychology, interpersonal relationships, mental health, physical health, making money, traveling, right? I mean, there's so many, these are your subject areas. And so that's number one. You need a subject area. Like finances. If you're working on career life purpose, finances. Number two would be your career life purpose. So my career life purpose is deep dive issues and projects in order to help myself and others accept themselves through understanding. That's my career life purpose. So, deep dive issues and projects in order to help myself and others accept themselves by use of the mind. So that's basically, if you look at my channel, that's what it is, right? It's like, it's theory, practice, but it's all based on self-acceptance. If you've watched like my last 3 videos, you can see it's all based on self-acceptance. Because if you don't have self-acceptance, you're going to be miserable in your life. So maybe self-acceptance is your subject area. Well, it is for me. That's the subject area for my career life purpose, actually, is self-acceptance. But then my purpose is to help myself and others. See, deep dive issues and projects, help myself and others. So that I have to create content in order to effectuate that purpose. That's a social purpose. That's a purpose that involves making money too, asking people to pay me. So how do you create, like if you're thinking about life purpose, how do you create the momentum that will get you to take massive action to where you're so obsessed with that purpose? That's all you're thinking about all the time. You're the only person in the world who is obsessed with that thing. Because of the fact that you're so obsessed with that thing, more so than everybody else in the world, you're going to become the best at that thing in the world, and you will win eventually. But how do you give people the momentum once they've found a purpose to blow the gaskets off their engine and just like chase after it like their life depended on it? But it's not coming from a place of necessity. It's coming from a place of like, it's like a healthy joy, or like, what do we call it? I'll give you the only example that I can really think of. Like, and we'll see why it works this way. But it's like banging your head against the wall and actually think that that's a good thing to do. Like everybody who's like an athlete understands this. Everybody who works out understands this, because you're banging your head against the wall, right? Anybody who plays chess understands this, who loses all the time, right? You're banging your head against the wall, but you're doing it like you're like, and then you get up and you keep fighting, and you fall down and you get up and you keep fighting. Or somebody who's trying to perfect on a musical instrument, right? Anybody who's like first learning a musical instrument sounds like shit. They think they sound good, but they actually sound like shit, because music actually has certain conditions to it, and good music follows certain principles, especially if it's instrumental music like classical music or jazz, and even rock music, and even more abstract forms of music like post-rock. Or even more abstract forms of music like krautrock, right? Or kind of more abstract forms of rock. I mean, the music still has to hang together in some way as music. It's got to work, right? Otherwise, you're going to lose your interest. It's not going to be music anymore. It's going to be awful, right? Just like any form of abstract art, right? Somebody's got to like it and go, that's, you know what I mean? That's different. Like Picasso, right? Is a good example. kind of breaking the rules but making it sound good. There's a lot of post-bop jazz musicians who do this too. Frank Zappa, bending the rules and being a little bit satirical too. Kind of the opposite of bubblegum pop, right? Both of those I can't stand, actually. Like, for me, I like middle of the road music, right? I don't like the extremes on either end. Like the shit that's like too poppy, too commercial. I don't like that. I don't like the stuff that's way out there, super experimental without any kind of melody or groove. It's like, you know what I mean? I don't particularly enjoy Picasso as a painter, right? A little bit too like trying to push the boundaries, So I like Caravaggio. I like Monet a lot. So we could talk about aesthetics too in another video. So the elephant in the room then really comes down to motivation. And a lot of my discussion with ChatGPT was on this issue. So the theory here is that you want to leverage extrinsic motivation with the right kind of mindset, because it's there, you might as well use it. But you want to create intrinsic motivation. And there's actually a strategy for doing this. The strategy is you have this alternation between practice and performance. So you can see this. There's many examples of this I'll give in the last part of this video. So I'm just wrapping up the theory end of it. Extrinsic motivation is the impinging doom of, if I don't do this, something's bad is going to happen to me, whether it's relationship-wise, health-wise, or finances-wise. The fear that you have of failing and dying and being cast out, whatever, however you want. That's extrinsic motivation. And the problem is that extrinsic motivation on its own is not sustainable, because once the problem goes away and the extrinsic motivation goes away, you no longer have any motivation to keep on your purpose. So this is why you need intrinsic motivation to have something that you can do sustainably and build a career off. It's got to be something where you're able to manufacture your own motivation through intrinsic motivation. And one way to do that, and ChatGPT and I were like patting ourselves on the back for like seeing this, is that, and I don't know if it was just humbling me or something like that too, but because I have this idea and I was running it by ChatGPT, but ChatGPT was like, it liked it. So what you do is you alternate practice with performance. Practice and performance. Practice is going to be when you're working on your to-do list. You're working you're like, let's say you're trying to learn how to become amazing in something, like getting your shit together. So this is where you're knocking things off your to-do list, during the day, and you're thinking about how to be even more efficient with your time too. But you're also you're like wrapped up in kind of life coach mode almost. Like you're like, I'm the best at this. I want to be better at this. I want to be better at I want to be better at life coaching. And you're doing it too, because the performance part of it is you have to have an in-person club or meeting in person where you're around other people who are doing the same game. They're playing the same game, and you're able to compare and compete with these people in a way and relate with these people and get all the social benefits that come from the relation. And you do that on the weekends. right? So on the weekdays, you're practicing. On the weekends, you're performing. Now, I just use that as a simple model for the theory. Okay, it could be the other way around. Maybe you're practicing on the weekends and you're performing on the weekdays. Or maybe you don't even need to use it to break the week up into those days. Or break, a day up into a day even. That's a smart ass thing to say, but a little bit. But yeah, what I'm saying is that there's no set way to break this apart. But the point is that you want a marriage or a link between practicing and performing, because the performing is going to drive the practicing. It's going to give you that intrinsic motivation to take the massive action regarding practicing, because you're going to be that Charlie Parker who's practicing alto sax for 4 hours a day because he's playing jazz on the weekends and he wants to be the best that he could be in terms of making music around all those other people, all those other band members who are doing the same thing. And there's a way to rate a musician on the bandstand as being less than or better than the other musicians that are on the bandstand. In a way, you need that performance aspect because that will keep you wanting to give your love of that, whatever that is. You're gonna want to be as good at it as you can. Like if you love music, you're gonna want to create the best music that you can in the jazz medium. If that's the medium that you've picked. If it's chess, you're going to want to go to the chess club on the weekends around all those other people and play over the board. And, you're going to want to have all that camaraderie. Maybe you go out for drinks after. Maybe you order Chinese food or pizza, everybody. But it's the social interaction and competition showing up in the world that does so much from... This is driven by relationship. It's not driven by work ethic or discipline. See, work ethic and discipline, starting with those is a no-go. Notice how I haven't mentioned discipline or work ethic yet, right? So in the last two and a half minutes of this video, we'll wrap that up and I'll give a couple practical examples. Okay, friends, so when I was first learning how to play jazz trumpet, I would practice all day long. And I would go to Golden Gate Park and just practice all day long. And people would come up to me all the time and they would say, man, you have such a work ethic. You have so much discipline. But it didn't feel that way to me at all. It didn't feel like I was forcing myself. See, forcing yourself would be extrinsic motivation. This is the wrong way to think about it. Like, first you need the fear that something bad is going to happen. Then you need to create purpose and a work ethic, and then you will get your result. No go, right? Use the extrinsic motivation, build intrinsic motivation, find a purpose, and then become obsessed with the performance aspect of that purpose, where you're meeting up in a group or a club, ideally in person. It could be over the internet, but I think it's better in person because this will help your social life too, if it's in person. So you create the club where everybody comes together. Maybe it's a running club, like a race. So in running, you're going out and you're running every day on the weekday, but on the weekends, everybody goes to the race. And then after the race, there's an after party. People mingle. They go out and they have drinks. Blah, blah, blah. So there's more to it and you're competing against everybody. There's a way that everybody in the club is able to compete with each other. And you live for the performance. So what ends up happening is that the reason why you have so much motivation to do the grindy part is because you know that when the weekend happens, you're going to be able to engage in the performance. Like, so for example, one of the ways that a lot of families have a lot of motivation is because even though they're grinding it out during the work week, on the weekend, they're going to their kids' sporting event. And that becomes the performance, right? And then there's a families meeting other families, everybody orders pizza. You live for the weekend, right? You live for the performance on the weekend, and that's what allows you to have a lot of intrinsic motivation to do those tasks, those like practicing your chops on the weekday. Okay, friends? This isn't rocket science, but I think this you don't want to try to hammer in affirmations, subconscious programming, work on discipline, work on even work ethic. Those things will come. They will naturally emerge for free. See? You got to get the theory right on this. If you don't start with the right theory, then and understand where the variables fit in, then I think you're going to get this wrong. But this is how you create sustainable change, or even short-term change, where it's on your terms. Because it's one thing to feel forced. It's another thing to feel like you're like stoked to do something, right? Which of those would you prefer to feel about something that really would be good for you to do? Well, you would feel better if you were just enthusiastic to do it, rather than feeling like you're under this, like you're living this life of feeling like there's a guillotine over your head, right? And if you don't do it, your head's going to get chopped off. I mean, that's no way to live, man. That's no way to live. That's a horrible way to live, right? Okay, friends, I'm a minute and a half over my time. Thank you very much, and have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.